Hello manga and anime lovers, I'm Branch Miner 1, you can call me Branch, and today I'm going to be talking about How to Become Ordinary, Season 2, Episode 3. Well, in some ways, with my predictions last time, I was completely off the mark, but in a lot of ways, I think I am spiritually still on the mark. You know, if we're going with the spirit of the law and rule of the law kind of um, position. So it turns out that Nita, the student instructor, what was it, the student counselor person, was not actually in charge of the fires, or at least it seems that way. I still have my suspicions. However, what Osanai and Mr. Cramschool guy were talking about at the end of the last episode with the whole turnaround was the fact that Nita was transferred for some reason. Like he was transferred to another school or something happened and he's no longer there. It's honestly kind of confusing why that happened because it's brought up so quickly. I was like, what? What do you mean he was transferred? There's no buildup or anything. And I have my suspicions on why he was transferred. And I think there may be a reason that the show is being so mysterious about it. And I guess I'll just come right out and say it. Osanai had definitely had something to do with him being transferred because Osanai knew he was going to be transferred. Cramschool guy knew he was going to be transferred. And if I'm not mistaken, and Cramschool guy and Osanai either are in this together or independently trying to do the same thing, then there would be a reason. Well, the only way they would know that he was going to be transferred would be if they had some either connection to the reason he was transferred or they were completely responsible. Now, Osanai, it seems exactly like something she would do, especially with last season with the driving license mystery and the kidnapping mystery. She basically orchestrated a lot of stuff in both of those. And how to put it? She was basically the reason that these people got arrested, even though they were doing things, or arrested or exposed or whatever, even though they were already doing things that would require that or would result in that kind of outcome. She was the linchpin to getting everything started. So it would not surprise me, especially since she gave what's his name, Urino, it wasn't a newspaper. I thought it was a newspaper. It was a list of the student faculty, I think, last episode with Nita either highlighted or maybe the show just highlighted it. So she was basically implying that something would happen to him. And as expected, or I guess as we see, because it was not expected, he transferred. And so the newspaper club is completely off the hook. And Urino publishes his more exciting version of the story that does not explain his thought process. And there's this whole really tense scene in the newspaper club where Urino is confronted by Kengo, because obviously him publishing this version of the script is not exactly what was expected of him, and it goes against everything they agreed on. And there's a huge fight about it. But it turns out that Kengo agrees that once he learns what his reasoning was for solving or predicting these fires, he takes back his criticism and says that this was for the best. And the reason is pretty complicated. And like I expected, there was no way to figure out what his thought process was for the fires because we were missing a huge piece of the puzzle. Even though there were slight hints in the previous episodes, it turns out that the perpetrator is going based on the fire safety. I don't know if it's like the drills or the separation of the areas that the fire departments cover. But regardless, all the areas where the fires happened are listed on there from bottom to top. So that's why, I mean, it's pretty easy in that case how he was able to predict because he just had access to this paper and he was going from bottom to top and said, oh, there is definitely a pattern going on here. These first, I think 2 or 3 it was at the initial time, during the initial cases, match up completely. So he just expected that they would just continue that pattern. And Kengo's reasoning for this being a good thing that they did not publish his thought process, his reasoning, was because there could be copycats. The newspaper club could be blamed for causing or for inciting more fires, especially because the news story was getting so popular within the school. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but I guess one way or the other, the newspaper club is in a pretty bad spot. The best thing to do would be to just drop the case entirely. However, unfortunately, Urino is way too prideful and way too ambitious to go along with that direction for the future of the club. And because Kengo is not nearly this invested, and he realizes how dangerous, like not in a physical way, but how dangerous reputational wise being president of the newspaper club is, he steps down and gives it to Urino, or rather Urino and the other quiet guy. I want to say battle it out for the title, but I'm pretty sure Urino just pressured him into it, because that's the kind of person he is. And it's very interesting. Like the mystery is all fun and all, but what's really interesting is seeing Urino's descent into madness, to put it one way. And it's because he is so obsessed with making his name and leaving a mark and just doing something notable with his high school life that he's kind of losing sight of literally everything else. And it's interesting because he is the poster child for why Osanai and Kobato want to become ordinary. And I have a suspicion that this is basically a mirror of what happened to Kobato and Osanai in middle school, is that either one or both of them did something like this, where they followed their passions too hard and it basically collapsed in them. As we see, Urino he's rushing toward a very, 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 very explosive end. I don't know what that will be, but we've had a preview what the consequences can be with the last time, especially because I don't think, depending on what he does in the next issue, he can really mess up the newspaper club's reputation and possibly get himself, I don't want to say expelled, because that's rather extreme, but definitely either suspended or harshly reprimanded. I really am interested to see, or rather, I'm really interested to see how exactly this all goes down. And we get a really good comparison with Osanai because there's two possibilities, because it's really difficult to read Osanai. She has either had enough with Urino and is basically saying, all right, you want to go this far, then so be it. Or Urino is doing exactly what she expected. And I think it might be the latter, because now we're going to come to my next theory. Now that I have more information, we know that Osanai is getting information from Monchi, the one who is in the newspaper club who's extremely against all this. And he's in her class. So I don't think there's any specific situation or relationship there. He's just in her class and he's really fed up with everything. So he's probably just complaining to Osanai. And Osanai is using this. If my suspicions about her getting Nita transferred are true, then she is using Urino to catch the culprit or to ensure that something happens regarding these fires. I don't know if catching the culprit is exactly the end goal here. It could be, because if the culprit burned the van, they might have something to do with that whole drug incident from last season. So she might be wanting to just close this case and catch the person who's responsible. I don't know. That seems a little too simple. And the way she acts, it's very interesting. She kind of pushes against Urino, but at the same time, in critical moments, she eggs him on, I want to say. Like Urino, I think Urino's desire to impress her at this point is basically, one step behind. It's not the primary objective he's going for, to say it in one way. He wants to prove himself. I don't know to who, to be honest. Osanai just kind of represents the fact that he wants to prove himself, but I don't think specifically Osanai is the only person he wants to prove himself to. Although it's strange because he's proven himself to the entire student population at this point. Everybody loves listening and reading his stories, and they all compliment him on it. Maybe he's just high on the fame. I don't know. But I do know is that he's definitely not putting any thought into his actions, or at least not as much as he should, to the consequences. He's just running full force, steam engine, open throttle, all the way to the finish line, and he's not going to stop till something literally crashes into him. And I have a feeling that's going to happen very soon. And speaking of things that might crash into him, we have Kobato coming in, finally getting involved in this case. I don't want to say seemingly out of nowhere. He has been in the background pretty much this whole season, but he's basically been learning a little bit here and there. And now that he's learned enough about the case, and he's talked to Kengo about it. Like I said last, or maybe in the first review, he's suspicious that Osanai is indirectly involved in starting these fires, like she's instigating somebody to do it, which would be more in line than her just starting them herself. But I don't think she's doing it. That's definitely, it's too extreme for her. Usually she gets somebody else to do it for her. Like, for example, in that drug incident, while she did incite the leaders of the gang to kidnap her so they would be caught, she didn't directly, I don't want to say it, she didn't directly incite them to cause harm for anybody but herself. I mean, technically they harm themselves by committing a crime, but that's basically as far as it went. These fires could very much have harmed somebody, especially that bus station fire where the bench was set ablaze, and that bus station was still in use. So I don't think she would be inciting somebody to commit this level of arson. Maybe the van might have been as far as it went, but past that point, I don't think she's directly involved. So I don't think she's actually directly involved in any of these. She just knows what's happening and probably knows who the culprit is. And Kobato has now basically uncovered the entire communication network, what's going on between the newspaper club and her and Urino. But apparently, this was the most wild thing to come out of this episode. Kobato's girlfriend is a serial cheater, or at least is very fickle. I don't know. It is just rumors, so I have a hard time taking them at face value. However, I would say that there probably is merit into it in some way, shape, or form. I don't think she's cheating on Kobato. However, she did not have a reason to start going out with him, as they explained last episode. She basically just thought, why not? And same with Kobato, he thought, why not as well. So I don't know. Compared to Osanai and Urino, they actually have the better relationship going on because they're not actively going against each other. They're just kind of awkward and they don't fit each other very well. They're not on the same wavelength. But I have it's hard to say because somebody who cannot commit versus somebody who didn't even want to commit in the first place, it's a really interesting dynamic. When maybe, I don't know if he'll confront her about it. He probably will because that's the type of person Kobato is. He confronts people about things that he's not sure about or that he figures out, and usually it ends up in it blowing up in his face. The other person, he's not exactly sensitive about those kinds of things. That's what happened with him and Osanai at the end of the last season. But it's hard to. I don't know enough about the brown-haired girl to say what her reaction will be or what even her journey will be this season. She's she's really like Urino in the way that she's probably seeking for validation or attention or companionship to an extreme extent. Urino is going about it by trying to create something and prove his worth, whereas this brown-haired girl, whose name I can't remember, is going about it by trying to find the perfect person and maybe finding too many. We shall see. I'm not going to make any assumptions about that. I'm really interested to see how that'll turn out, especially if we get more focus now that Kobato is coming back into the story. I guess one final thing I will say is that, oh no, not really. I was going to talk about Urino and trying to kiss not Kobato, Osanai at the end of the episode, which is, I don't know about that. I don't know if they have. I don't think they've kissed before because they haven't even really held hands. He was saying, which is another point that in the theory that Osanai is using him for her own ends, is that when he was telling Cram School person last episode that they never go on dates or hold hands, I don't think she doesn't like him very much at all. She even tells him this episode she prefers people who are ordinary, which is rich coming from her. I don't think she does prefer people who are ordinary because both times she has picked somebody who is far from being, quote unquote, her definition of ordinary. So that's why I think she's using him for something, or at least she's subconsciously using him for something once he disappointed her. But really, that's all I can really say because we don't know enough to tell what exactly is going on in either of their heads. I think at the end of at the end of the next episode, I will have enough to basically have a full picture, unless some crazy twist happens, on what's going on. Because Kobato will probably uncover a bunch of different minor clues that will help put the entire picture together. But until then, I hope you like listening to me yap on about this series. It is still really good. I really do like just watching things unfold. At first, it was kind of disjointed, but now everything is coming together in a pretty tight package. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the solution. Although I have a feeling it'll be a couple more episodes before we get the conclusion to this part of the story. So I hope you'll catch me in the next episode. If not, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. So long.